January 5th Budget Committee.
Explain who's speaking to them. Make sure that you say who's speaking. We've got a few people on Zoom, so be sure you identify yourself clearly so they can hear you.
You guys, Mike, Jane, and Brenda, are you guys familiar with the chat function on here? On the Zoom application, and you're familiar with the chat option, and if you hover your mouse over the screen, you should see down the bottom, there's a little bubble that says chat.
Yeah, I see that.
All right, so if you come up with a question or something like that, or you have something to say, what we'll probably do is we'll publish something like that, if you have a question. And anybody in your microphone up, so we'll be able to hear you. This may come into the mic. Mr. Marconi, you can mic check it.
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, so what's nice is we can all hear you.
Yeah.
Although that's a double-edged sword, I suppose.
Don't take it
Very
down.
much to say.
Loud and clear. Signal we're getting here.
All right, so when you're not speaking or if you have something to say, it's easy for you to speak up, but otherwise, if you mute, that'd be great. I am ready to go.
Okay, I want to call this meeting to order. It's 6:30, and I noticed we have a quorum, so we make note of that, a live quorum, and we also have a few people who are participating by Zoom. They're information givers, I think, more than voters. So I think everybody, all the voting members are here. I don't think we have any members who are zooming in.
No budget committee members, no.
Okay.
Are you?
Right. First order of business will be approving the minutes from our last budget meeting. Someone wants to make a motion to that effect? Okay, is there a second on the motion?
I'll second it.
Great. Any comments or additions or corrections?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
on the discussion from the library budget, I'd like to have added my question to Lara about wage expenditures while the library was closed, and also her reply that the library employees were approximately 60% utilized during closure time.
I'm a little concerned about the 50% utilized. I think there's some confusion.
Well, when I asked her what the saturation of the employees was, she stated that they were 60% saturated with work. That played into my question about wage expenditures, which is essentially what did the town get for what we spent?
Okay,
That's the only point I have there.
okay. So your correction is 60%, her answer was 60% saturated?
Yes,
All right.
yes.
I recall the same thing.
Okay, I remember it did come up, and there was some confusion about terminology and what applied to what, so I want to make sure we
Yes.
were clear on that.
Yep.
Okay,
And my other ask is on the fire department budget. I asked Chief Hoyt if he saw any increase or expected any increase to PPE, to which he stated no.
okay. The recorder made those changes? Okay, any other changes or additions? All right, all in favor of accepting the minutes as amended, raise your hands. Okay?
I believe because of the nature of, I don't think we have any committee members on
Right.
virtual, which means we don't need a roll call.
mean, people can record, in the minutes, we record everybody who votes. In this case, I think it was unanimous. Did anyone abstain? Or were there any negatives? Okay. So I always do get the extensions and negatives as soon as they are supposed to. So we do have a record of how we all vote as individuals. So far, all voting is a block.
I believe we're recording the last week's meeting plus this week's meeting, so any discrepancies with the minutes could also be correlated with that recording. Is that correct?
Good point, yep. Okay. The next order of business is the planning board. That's tab 20 on your book. The tabs are organized alphabetically, and of course, you don't hear them alphabetically. You hear them strategically, depending on how much time we have for each session. What I'd like to do is have someone move the bottom line for discussion purposes, and someone second it, and after which I'll recognize Dennis, who can explain where they're going this year.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second? Okay. We're all aware of the bottom line on the last page? Okay. Dennis, go ahead.
Just for the record, I want to make sure the bottom line reads 171,865. I want to make sure we're all on the same page, we all have the same document.
Oh, okay.
John, can I interrupt? I'm sorry, Dennis, if you could include in your remarks why we received something from 2020. There was an email that we received, and maybe Martha,
yeah, I
if
know
someone
what
could
it is.
explain what that means, because I was confused by that.
Okay, I printed this out. So all you can see, the history of it, basically it was a request from all of you, I guess, at the last meeting in Martha. I passed it along, this explains it. John Krebs and I worked on this. I wanted this to be included because I thought some of you might have been confused by it. It's just that one attachment we didn't see. And what we were concerned about is inundating all of you with too much information. So you have it? There you go. You all set? So the question, so John Krebs and I went through and we had one item in 2020. I don't know why the board was asking for 2020, but we went through that item and analyzed and have all the data right here. And we overexpended in that item $7,000 some odd dollars. So it's $37,000. The budget, I believe, was for $25,000. And all but $7,000 were reimbursed back to the town through applications to the town. And that's the benefit of having contractors working for us. We're able to charge, we're able to charge for their time, and the applicants pay for the cost to the town mostly, not all of it. Approximately $7,000 of that was the expenses of the board, Norwich Engineering specialists, and asking them for their expert opinion on certain items at the point that the planning board wanted to know about, and it wasn't an application, it was before the board. So that is also true, by the way, for our legal fees, our planner, and other fees that we have, that we can actually take those costs and give them to the applicant that is before the board. So a lot of the costs you see in the budget you see is reimbursed back to the town, to the general fund. What I didn't understand why the budget committee was asking for the 2020 year, because in there you asked for, what are you gonna do to fix it? There's nothing we can do to fix it, till the year's closed out. I don't think anyone can fix it.
If years going forward. I'm guessing that was the
I
first.
think that's what Martha was saying, is that what you were saying, Martha? Is that what you understood it to be? From going forward, you want to have,
I think I might have come up, hijacked and answered Martha, but I think this might have come from something that we were talking about last when we met, in September or October, where we spoke about, being able to reconcile, having the committees help us reconcile what line items had been transferred from where, and why they were overexpended.
Exactly.
I don't know if the spirit of it was to go back to 2020, but maybe you can answer that part.
Thank you. So Rick Stern actually had asked about this because traditionally, since Rick came in office as a selectman, he had made it a point that we always keep track of where the department over expenditures are. And to that end, when Rick asked for it, we provided to the budget committee a scan of all of the department's approvals by the Board of Selectmen for 2020. Now, 2021 has just ended, so we'll start to get ready to do that process again for you. And you'll see all of those scans.
we didn't blow the overall budget. In fact, we turned in that year, I think, in the neighborhood of $40,000, $50,000, which is that one line item. But as you know, planning and applicants to the board, we never know who's coming to the board.
Yep.
So, thank God, a lot of it's reimbursable, back to the town clerk, it goes on, it goes back to next year's budget. Okay, so, hopefully that works. The only thing is that I can't always tell at the end of December, like today, I can't tell you what we expended in 2021, because we're still getting the bills in, we still have to balance the books and see where things basically fall out. And then at that point, if we ever do have to, balance a line, we would hopefully have enough within our budget that we didn't expend
Yeah.
to help pay for it. And I think that's always been, as far as I know, it's always been this issue, it's always been the case with the planning board, where we've always been able to basically resolve that. But I don't think we've ever had over expenditures, because Martha told me about this form, and I said, what form? You know? So I think we got it. I think we understand it. It's just that it's late. I can't tell you this year what the end result is gonna be. I can only tell you, I can tell you that in another month, basically. Okay?
Sure. I mean, the important point is that a large percentage of this is reimbursable. You can say, a bit like the ambulance fees. We've got a significant amount of money in ambulance fees. That amount is estimated, so it appears in the budget. You know, if for some reason, God forbid, there was a huge crisis and we had tripled our ambulance calls and tripled fees, you know, they would be over budget, and the selectmen would have to find the money and have a special town meeting. And in the sense, what you're saying, the planning board, you got a little more business you anticipated, but it's mostly reimbursable, and you pull it out of your budget. Correct. Okay.
So for those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Dennis Hebert, Chairman of the Planning Board. I think most of you do know me, but in case I don't see all of you all the time. Been doing this for a while. And the bottom line is that we held the budget again, as we were asked to hold the line, we did. And the thing is that we have applicants coming before us, and we had an extremely busy year. The budget might be blown. I guess that happened years ago in 1984, 83, for example. We had a lot of construction going on in commercial, so. But it very rarely happens unless all of a sudden something major comes in. I've looked at the numbers, the board has looked at the numbers, and we've adjusted them around what we think could be more expensive in one area than what we did last year, but we held them well line. And it's pretty straightforward. I don't think there's anything that's changed from last year.
The contract planner is up. Could you explain that?
The what?
The expenditure for contract planner, that line is higher.
That's correct. It went up a little higher. This overall cost I have, working 24 hours a week, times 51 weeks, times $75 per hour, his rate went up. That was already scheduled in this contract. So that comes up to $91,800, and we had a remainder of $1,850, so a total of $93,650. We're extremely busy right now. I know he's been extremely busy. He's straight out. We're getting a really good deal for for what he's doing for us.
Okay, so you said 24 hours a week, it sounds like sometimes he works more,
Yes, he does.
and he doesn't charge more.
Well, I know if I have a question for him, and it's in his contract, and I call him, he's gonna answer it and talk to me on the phone. You know, typically, he just does that.
Okay. But the contract was negotiated to have some COLAs throughout,
Have a,
increases.
yes, this is the third year of his contract, so this is the final one. There'll be a renegotiation next year if anything changes or continues what we presently hold it at.
Okay.
Okay? Any questions, any more questions?
Rich Stern, Dennis, legal services. Do we get any of that money back from an applicant?
Yes, we do, and I did not get that number for you. I've been working with Cheryl Bagley, she does great support for me in the planning board. We're trying to get all the money that we would get back at the end of each year, but we don't have that total yet. But I think it's gonna be in the neighborhood, same thing as what you saw, that one example for engineering services, we got back $30,000, there'll be some other number like that we get back. And we also get some of that money back for the planner himself. So you should see another $30,000 going back to the general funds, as in addition to what we already, for engineering.
Thank you.
Dennis, I'd like to tag off that question. Is that the reason why that line is so significantly underspent each year? We only spent about 60% of the legal budget. Is that because of the recuperation of fees?
No, you will not see the recuperation of fees, they do not come back to the planning board's budget. They go back to the general fund. Every dollar that comes in has to go to the general fund.
Okay.
It's just money that wasn't expended.
Right.
We hope that's the issue at the end of every year. But, you know, I hate to get into something, not have that $25,000 there, and we have a big expense, and then I gotta go talk to the selectmen and say, hey, please, may I have some money? But we don't wanna do that. Take it out of my salary, yeah.
Dennis, you have a contract with the town planner that you said is 3 years long.
That's correct.
What about for engineering and for legal?
We contract with them as outside vendors that come in. John Krebs comes in and has an actual office in town hall.
Yep. Okay. So the other guys are not contracted, they're individually contracted per job or?
Yeah, they have an office outside, they do work for other people as well, but it's sort of a different kind of a issue. They are called as needed. John Krebs is coming in every 2 days a week to 3 days a week. He does a lot of work at home, so it's, he's here to answer questions for people on a regular basis. The other ones, engineering and legal, it's as we need them, he calls me.
Is there a process for how you select who you call for what job?
There's not a process, we said we need engineering, we need legal. I get on the phone, John gets on the phone and calls.
The same contractor. I guess is my question, is there any?
Oh, I know what you mean, yes.
Are you selecting from 3 different vendors or something like that?
We have 2 different attorneys right now that we use. And based on how one may be very busy and the other may not be, or the expertise of one versus another one, we will go basically based on our experience in working with those vendors or contractors on what they can offer us. If we have engineering here, I'll give you a good example. We have a small bridge being built in one of our subdivisions that's coming up. The bridge, not everyone is a bridge engineer. We don't have a bridge engineer. So we are requiring that we get an engineer that does review the bridge design for the planning board. It would not be Altus Engineering, which does all of the other, excuse me, I'm gasping through my basket. The engineering firm that we hire is not bridge design experts. So we want to have someone review the design to make sure it's a good design and that the bridge doesn't collapse in 10 years. Okay, so it's based on knowledge that we have of different people and their expertise.
So that's not necessarily engineering, not necessarily designated to one company.
Right now, we have Altus Engineering, which is pretty much doing all civil work for the town. but for some reason, they had a conflict of interest with the town and another applicant coming, because they've done work for them, and that happens on occasion. We will have another engineering firm to pull in to do it, but right now, for example, engineering, it's also Altus Engineering, unless we have a reason to go elsewhere.
Could that be an applicant request, or what's the, besides, specialty?
No, that would be the town's request, not an applicant's request. Because the engineer is gonna be representing the town, not the applicant.
Any other questions for Dennis? Okay, if not, as you know, these votes are simply to pass on to the public hearings for consideration. It's not a affirmative vote, it's a tentative vote. So all in favor of passing on the planning board budget of $171,865 to the public hearing, raise your hand. And it looks like we have unanimous vote from members of the board. Okay, board here. Great, thank you very much. Thank you, Dennis. I always learn a little bit every time you come here.
What's that?
I said I always learn a little bit every time you're here.
Thank you.
Maybe eventually we'll know.
Martha, off topic, separate from the planning board, you mentioned the scans you have, the line item moves. You guys make scans of all the line item moves?
Yes, yes.
We'll have those before the public hearing?
You have, oh, definitely, for 2021, yes.
Brandon, that's actually an oversight. It's why it is an RSA that says the selectmen have to include any moving of money in the budgets.
Correct, yeah. And, no, but I'm asking, will it be disclosed to the budget committee before our public hearing?
Right, that we know that will.
Yeah, a little bit more.
Okay, the next item is the Conservation Commission. And we have a total budget. Now, this is interesting, totals after encumbrance. Total department budget, $3,342.
So Jane, that's you. Would you like, I don't want to hijack you. Oh, sure, John, you want to?
Okay, let's just have a motion to entertain that figure.
Sure.
Motion and second for, okay, good. All right, Jane?
In trouble hearing you, John.
Okay.
Very muffled.
All right.
Yes, I think you're leaving.
You're coming in loud and clear, by the way, Jane.
Yeah, you're coming in loud and clear, Jane.
But I can't hear John. I totally
It's probably
do not
not going somewhere
understand
on the laptop.
anything.
The microphone's in the laptops, we got a little challenge here, but, anything that you don't hear, I'm happy to repeat for you, if there's questions, okay?
Okay.
But if you'd like, as we kind of customarily do, if you'd like to just walk us through the budget that changes this year and, maybe, explain some of the changes if there are any.
So basically, our budget's the same. We did not spend our two largest line items, which was the community education because of COVID. And we always have $5,000 for consultant because we never know what's gonna come up with the next year. So we've had those two items encumbered since we didn't spend them this year, and we might not spend them next year, but we need them in our budget. And the rest is the same.
I don't wanna, get lost in semantics, but that's not an encumbrance, right? That's,
You can't encumber that.
you can't
No.
encumbrance is not a specific project that you unexpectedly are turning over to 2022, but point being, all of that money will be returned to the general fund as unexpended, then this will be a new appropriation voted on by the budget committee in the town for 2022.
Unless you
Okay, the
have,
selectmen did not explain it that way.
Well, Ted's here if you wanna hold him accountable.
All I need to make sure is that we have those two items covered for 2022.
yeah, I was confused when I saw that encumbrance line too, 8,842 with encumbrance. It's Brandon pointed out, it's not really an encumbrance, because you haven't contracted for a specific project, like ordering a fire truck or something. So what is the budget that the selectmen want to recommend? Just, assuming the encumbrance just goes back into the unassigned balance.
Right, the encumbrances would be separate. The total department budget is $3,342 that you see above.
Okay,
Thank you.
so that's all they get to spend, unless they come to you for more money.
My understanding is that's what the CONSCOM needed, as long as the encumbrances were taken care of. But I
I
stand
don't
corrected.
understand what you mean by the encumbrances are taken care of.
There are, if the Conservation Commission or any other department, like the planning board, enters into a contract before year end
Oh.
with a vendor, they have the ability to ask the board of selectmen to encumber those funds
Mhm.
until they're spent in 2022.
Yeah, okay, so that 5,000 comes out of the 2021 budget.
Right.
It's gonna be in the budget, right?
Is that?
It's gotta be in the
It's
budget.
gotta be in the budget. So,
It-
did you
yeah.
encumber the money in 2021?
I don't believe that has been done yet.
Was there any specific vendor that you wanted to encumber to us?
I have to talk to Jane about the details, and I'm glad to do that.
Okay,
Jane, we're lost on, so the $5,000 for your consulting, would need to be, I don't know if it's as hard and fast as it needs to be under contract for work that's going to take place in 2022, but there would certainly need to be a use for that money in that year, under contract now, in order for us to encumber the money. Otherwise, the $5,000 gets returned to the general fund, it reappears as the department budget, $5,000, the town appropriates $5,000 to your 2022 budget, if there's not a contracted need for it during 2022 that was agreed to in 2021.
right, yeah. So what we
No,
have-
there's been no contract.
Okay,
Yes, so that's, I totally understand. It can't be encumbered. We need it as not a new item, but we need to continue the $5,000 in the new budget. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes.
yeah, so that would be normally under
Consulting, that's 865.
865, so, okay, yeah.
Jane, can I ask you another one? Community education, I understand you probably want to keep that line item open. Right now it's at a $0, unless you're encumbering that because you have a contract signed in 2021 to spend the money in 2022. If you don't have that, would you like to keep the line item open, or do you anticipate doing community education in 2022?
We plan to. It totally depends on COVID, of course. So yes, we need the $500 in that, for that line item in 2022.
So then probably what, maybe, Emily,
Can we just make a motion to have those items?
Yes,
But we don't have a contract, we don't have,
That's fine.
like, speakers or anything set up as yet.
We're gonna put it in your regular budget. And then it'll be there if you need it next year. If you don't need it, then we'll put it in the budget for next year. So as Rick said, we have to budget everything you're going to spend. So I think we need two motions. We need a motion to add $500 on 321 and $5,000 on 865.
Jonathan, before you do that, can I ask another question?
Sure.
So at the bottom, it says total encumbrances 8842. What is that?
That's the whole budget.
that is
The whole
the
budget.
5,500 rate.
That's the $5,500.
That is,
On
865
top,
and
okay.
319.
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
So we're not doing that, so we somehow have to do
Right.
that.
What we're doing is we're gonna amend the recommendation, we're gonna add 5,500. So the total budget for 2022 will be just 80,000.
8842 will be the whole budget, okay.
And this, we can have.
That's
it
correct.
This is the public hearing, but I think someone's gonna make a motion to that effect.
Sure, I would make a motion to add $500 to the line item ending in 321 and $5,000 to the line item ending in 865. Therefore amending the total department department budget to 8842.
Okay, so you're adding 500 and then 5,000.
And I'll second that.
Okay, seconded by Rick Stern. Okay, good. Let's go on. I'm gonna have us vote on that amendment, then we can continue to discuss the budget. So we're gonna take a vote now on that amendment to add $500 and 5,000, those two categories. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed or abstentions? Okay, that's unanimous. All right, we can continue with discussing the budget. If anyone has any questions to Jane.
So, just a matter of circumstance, I would vote that the totals, the encumbrance would be made to zero.
Yes, right. Zero.
Right, that's important to add, right?
Yeah, yes,
Yes, that's correct.
it's after the end, it's the end of the year,
So do we need a separate vote?
no,
Okay,
that's just bookkeeping.
okay.
So just, when you update that, just eliminate the encumbrances, because there are no encumbrances in this budget for
Right.
2021.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions for the Conservation Commission? Okay, if not, I will then take a vote on the new bottom line, which we're going to recommend to the public hearing is $8,842. Well, we amended the motion, so I think we're good. We can now just vote on that now. All in favor? Aye. Okay, any opposed or abstentions? Okay, that's unanimous. Jane, thank you very much. Don't know if you can hear me. Maybe not.
Thank you, Jane, appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Mr. Chair,
Bye.
may I ask a question? Based on what you just said, and my wife, I just proposed that we do have encumbrance for the planning board, but I understand, Martha, that's a separate item,
That's a separate item, separate.
because I noticed that you put encumbrance to zero. We don't have encumbrances this year listed on the planning board based on how, I guess, we're doing the books, or whatever, but I just wanted to make sure that, that encumbrance is going to be happening in a later time, Martha?
The planning board encumbrance has been voted by the Board of Selectmen.
That's all we need to do?
That's all you need to do.
That money is encumbered.
Was that?
If the money is encumbered.
Okay, I just wanted, I didn't know if you needed to know that, that's why I'm asking. I'm sorry if I.
Why is it not listed on their department sheet?
It shouldn't be, frankly.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that I missed the Conservation Commission, but traditionally those are not listed on the budget. It's confusing. You know, you're working on your 2022 budget, and so we want to make sure that everything you vote is going to town meeting, you know?
Yes and no, but it's not representative when you look at the numbers of what was actually spent in 2021. It doesn't include what you're going to encumber and spend in 2022. It would make it look like the budget number's short.
It should count. The total spent should include the encumbrance.
It's not.
Total
That's been spent.
spent.
Oh, I know that, but
Total
it's, when you encumber it, it's as good as spent.
I wasn't trying to make a mess here, I'm just trying to make sure.
I mean, if
We have a
it's never
contract with
budget
somebody, we
for
just want to make
We
sure.
don't want to
we
open
pay.
the planning board session back up. but
No, we don't.
What is being, well, what is being encumbered?
It was $6,000,
Under what line?
the CIP. It was, I don't know what line it was.
Capital improvements?
It's a capital improvement.
It says, there's capital, that's the first part of that line, capital improvements. This capital improvements was, let's see, 1 second, please.
It's
It's
titled
master plan,
master
it's
plan.
covered under the master plan line.
And you've already got the
We
contract.
got the contractors in place, we're gonna work it out.
If the contract's in place, the money's spent.
I just wanted to make
It's
sure,
never been dispersed.
I just wanted to make sure we had it covered, that's all, thank you.
Okay. All right. I appreciate your alertness on all of this stuff. The next item is the sewer commission, that's tab 23.
Dennis, you have to push the
Okay,
button.
the, budget, bond, expenses. So the total total budget here is $1,582,929. If I could have a tentative motion on that tonight. Okay, is there a second?
Well, sorry, John, I got a refresh from
Yeah,
what,
we have a
a
refresh.
different number.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Great.
You see that?
Oh, see that?
Yep, all right, yep. Okay, so what's our new bottom line?
1369491.
1369441. Okay. Could I have a motion on that figure? Okay, and second, all right, good. I'll turn it over to sewer commission for any, anything you might wanna say.
From when I initially drew up the budget to this number you see, there was a reduction in interest, as I had no idea at the time about the bond for the force main.
Mhm.
So that's why that correction is in.
Mhm.
The commission has lowered a couple of accounts in here. There are some accounts that have gone up. Pretty much it has to do with sampling, because in the new permit that we will be getting approval for, there is testing for PFOAs twice a year in the sludge, which we already do, and influence in the effluent. Amongst other testing for the Great Bay estuary for our permit and the federal permit. So that's why some of those lines are up. They did again reduce a couple of other lines.
Okay.
So,
And the biggest item, of course, is the management contract in addition to the bond, which is huge. The management contract, is that have a few more years to run, or when do you renegotiate that?
I'll be honest with you, I didn't hear. what-
Okay, the management contract, do you negotiate that every year, or is that negotiated for a period of time?
Typically 5-year periods.
Okay,
In the information that I supplied to the budget committee, you'll see that they had extended it for a couple of years back in a year or so. But again, a lot of that information you have.
okay. So how many more years are you running on this contract?
Give me a minute. And I'm just an employee, I don't negotiate fees. I think in they extended it for 3 years in 2020. So 2023, whatever the chairman, the commission at that time decides, it'll go out to bid.
All right, so rebid in 23, okay. Could be,
John, can I speak?
Sure.
I'm sewer commissioner too. Part of the piece that he's handed out was the contract, so it's extendable to 2025.
okay, extended to 2025. Is there an automatic COLA in that, or? And what is it, is it percentage?
Which percentage of the,
It was 3.8 some odd percent this year, is that what it is every year?
this year?
In April, they'll come in with a yearly contract adjustment on the CPI.
Okay,
Now, there's a minimum 1% requirement. If it's, say, the cost of living is 8%, I'm sure my company's going to want a little higher adjustment. Chemical costs have gone up, just polymer alone has gone up 6%, powder's gone up. If in in the professional service agreement contract, you'll see all the deliverables that we have to deliver and what we have to pay for.
Okay.
Whether it's gas, electricity, all those have gone up. Chemical costs.
So every year when you submit a new contract, it includes those price increases.
Yeah, they'll negotiate a base contract for 5 years, and every April, if there can be at minimum a 1% adjustment.
Okay. All right, good.
Do you mind, reviewing line number 800, Dennis, which is the EPA upgrade line?
Yeah.
Just tell me what that is.
That's a line item that there is a amount of money in there that was reduced by 30,000 that the EPA and the DES continually change the game as we go along. There can be testing requirements, we just don't know. So that's what, we're just carrying an amount in there.
So if you don't mind me
They
asking,
did reduce that by 30,000.
so it looks like in 2021, you had a department budget of $100,000 there, and you spent, well, I don't know what it is at the end of the year, because we only have towards the end of 5 weeks before the end of the year, $8,600. So where does the balance of that 94,000 or so, or I'm sorry, 91,000?
Where is it? I mean, I don't know if it's been spent. Honestly, I haven't seen the final printout, readout of the budget. Typically, if there's leftover money, it'll go into their enterprise fund, i.e. general fund.
But not the towns.
No,
Separate.
this
The
is
function's the same.
sewer rate paid this, so it typically stays in their account.
Gotcha, so does that go to offset ratepayers, Rick, do you know, or where does that money end up?
Goes to the enterprise fund, in case we have any emergency happen.
How much is in the
Yeah,
fund
what's the
now?
balance?
The state requires it, do you have the number on what our enterprise fund is right now? Just over $1 million.
So what now?
It's just, the enterprise fund is just over $1 million.
Yeah, about $1.3 million.
The state requires us to have money back up in case something drastic happens.
Yeah, do you know what they require?
I don't know what they require.
Okay.
This is comparable to budget items. To spend that money, if you had a serious problem that had to be spent, does that require a special town meeting? Or are they free to spend the enterprise fund? I don't know. Isn't it? Interesting point, but basically, it functions if you have some balance. I just don't know whether they need to budget if they want to spend it.
Can I ask a question? Do you know how much a year approximately is going to that fund?
It varies.
Okay. I'm just curious, because it's not just that line item that's underspent, so I'm just curious if, I guess that was the nature of my question is, if you look at, like, the testing fees, for example, that line item, line item ending in 490, are we expected to, come close to that $30,000 by the end of the year, or not? I mean, same with the engineering line item. Budget was $50,000, and as of the end of November, we spent $4,800. Those are significant amounts of money. Yeah.
When do we expect all the invoices to come in? Because it feels hard, to Ellen's point, there's a big gap here between the actual and what you budgeted for. And I appreciate the fact that maybe it's not all the invoices are in, but when will you know? And I'm wondering if it's before the public hearing. Because this is, to your point, it's huge.
Dennis?
I'll know tomorrow, because I'll be calling the young lady to get a printout. I was hoping I had it, but I don't know if I have it.
Is the enterprise fund interest bearing?
Yeah, it is.
Where's that income? How much is that?
It's that interest stays in that fund. stays in the enterprise.
But guys, to have a budget meeting and say, I don't know how much we underspent, how much is going to this fund, I don't know how much is in the fund, I don't know how much we're gonna gain from interest from the fund, but it's there. When does that stop, 10 million?
No.
What's the cap on?
I mean, I can tell you that the enterprise fund has about $1.3 million. We probably with interest of what, 0.08%? We make about,
0.08?
well, it's at TD Bank, it's not gain.
And if
It's no different than your account or my account.
Okay.
So, it's making $118 a month maybe. It's nowhere near $10,000. But that money stays in that account. Because the EPA says any ratepayer money needs to stay within its own account and not commingled with, like, you can't take our money and go buy a town dump truck. That's not gonna happen.
You know, we understand that.
That's
And
not,
okay,
That's not
I'm
the
just explaining this.
you have to understand, when we come up with a prospect of having a town-wide meeting to discuss how to incentivize people with tax breaks to come into town, move into town, because we have a sewer problem, the issue of how much money's in the enterprise fund, if you're offsetting any of the ratepayers' rates, becomes a big issue.
And that was done last year to the tune of $250,000.
So-
To help lower, in the information I supplied you, I explained that, to help lower that rate, because we're all cognizant of the fact of what the sewer ratepayers are paying. I get the phone call when the sewer bills get up.
Yeah.
We have a responsibility to run that plan under my license, make sure we're putting out clean water and that it is well maintained, which the sewer commission in your town, from the 40 years I've been here, has always done.
No, and I think, so I appreciate that, and I don't think that's the issue, is I think in order for us to approve anything, I think we need more information. So I think if we could get the amount of what the minimum requirement is to have in the fund, we could get that, what the RSA says around that. I think if we could also understand, all the invoices where we are to date. I don't feel comfortable voting yes or no on this right now, and I don't know if it's something we can move ahead until next week to vote on the number. John, I don't want to throw a wrench into this, but this is a huge gap, and we don't have the answers that we need, at least I don't have the answers I need in order to make an informed vote. We're not trying to, question anybody, we just need answers before we can move ahead, at least I do.
Okay. I think it's, let me see if I can put this in a nutshell. So we would like a report on the enterprise fund. So we know how much is in it, how much goes out of it, how much comes into it. And also, I would like to know how it's spent. Is it part of their budget? I mean, I know they set the sewer rates, but do they then, how do they spend the money from the enterprise fund? If it isn't voted by the town, how do they spend it?
To the sewer commission?
It's probably a legal status, it might be considered an encumbrance. But if it's not, if it's closer to what the town's unassigned value is, then it's gotta be budgeted, as you said. That's a question that just came up as we were discussing this.
If I may.
Yeah,
What the budget committee pretty much does is give spending authority for the sewer committee. Say if something major catastrophic happens at the treatment plant, and we have that 1.3 enterprise fund.
yeah,
The past practice has been that the commission will write a letter to the trustees of the trust fund for this, because as the attorney for the commission said, that fund can be used for emergency repair. Unbeknownst to the budget cycle, if something needs to be repaired, we need to get it. In our business, they're not $2,000 items. Those get taken up through the maintenance budget or through the contract that we have. We have a $25,000 fund for anything under $1,000 to maintain and get repaired. So that money in the enterprise fund is not a blanket checkbook that the three commissioners can just say, well, let's go out and buy whatever. I mean, it has to be a genuine thing that was unexpected, that needs to be purchased.
And I don't think anybody's accusing you of doing that. The issue is we
I'm
don't.
not thinking any,
Yeah.
trust me, I'm not thinking anybody's accusing me, I'm just here to explain the budget.
Yeah.
I've been through these, not here, I'm the city councilor, I've been through these, I don't take it
So
personally.
what I think you're hearing from us is we need more information, at least from me, in order to approve it. Because to Emily's original point, there's significant gaps in your spend for 2021 and what you want for 2022. So how can you justify something that's so much bigger than what you spent for 2021? And what I think I'm hearing from you is that there are invoices still coming in, and you don't know where 2020 money's ended up yet. We need to know that, because unlike the other budgets that are big, some of them are very big, they're closer to where their actuals are.
Correct.
And so I need more information in order to, vote on this. So I think if you were saying you were gonna, have a conversation with Cheryl about it, hopefully she can get you more detailed information on where you are here today.
Okay.
So that, I think I agree with that. And also, as I said, I'd like to know what the state's legal wording is of how that money is spent. I appreciate, of course, you have to fix a major catastrophic break. No question there, but how is it legally done? I know how it's done on the town side, but I'm curious about this enterprise fund.
I think it would be nice too, that before the next meeting, if you guys can establish maybe what your run rate on that enterprise fund is, equating that to the general fund in the town, we can't just build that. At some point, it needs to offset the rate or the property taxes. We wouldn't just build it up until it becomes this massive fund. So how much have you used in the past out of that enterprise fund for the major maintenance and repairs? Because the opposite angle of what you're talking about, where, hey, we need to have that money and that flexibility is, yes, but at some point there's an overabundance of money, and for the sewer district to come to the town of Newington, the ratepayers, and ask for, $60,000, $80,000, for major maintenance on top of that safety net that you have, we should say you can use that. So there should be a minimum threshold of where you guys want that fund at. We did this to the fire department last year when we said, it's great to keep putting money in, or even the police department, it's great to keep putting money in these funds for radios and ambulance, but what's the cap, guys? We're not gonna keep doing this and then just spend it because we got it. It's gotta cap out, so that there's some years of savings. I think it's the same idea here. If you believe it's $1.3 million that's needed in the enterprise fund because that's what's been used before, there's been major repairs that have come to somewhere close to that, you need to have a cushion, that's one conversation. But if it's, we've never expended over $100,000 of that fund in a calendar year, well, we shouldn't be appropriating this money from the ratepayers.
There is a piece of paper in the packet somewhere, and it does have some information about the enterprise fund in it, that's in our packet. If I could help you out a little bit.
Here's the thing, if I may, I gave a whole
Yeah,
packet of information with the assumption somebody was gonna read it.
yeah.
Yes, excuse me, yes, I appreciate that, but, you're in front of the budget committee, and if we have questions, we would really like you to write a summary for us, so that it's reading the information as well as being able to have a dialogue about it and hearing from you directly.
So I think this, but to Mary's point, I think this does go through some of the leasing expenditures from that particular fund, but I know that.
I didn't read it that way. I
Well,
read it separately. Nothing about the enterprise.
so they have a list from 2013 to 2020 of the, some of the funds that have been expended from that fund.
Yep, right in the beginning, right?
I don't know where.
My question was, it's that September 14th, 2021? Oh, no.
It says at the top that the Consumer Commission Enterprise Fund.
There you go.
Yeah,
Now, you notice at the top it says 2013 and 14, two leaks, okay? We had to replace that line. So how much money came out, Dennis, do you remember, off the enterprise fund to do that force main, that section?
about 250 on the Woodbury section, Woodbury Ave.
How about the one that went to the wetlands?
Well, that's when we get the SRF.
Yeah, so we got a loan.
That was about 780,000 of final close up.
So that's what kind of money you're looking at. If we had to pay it out of the enterprise fund and not get a loan for it, we'd have to spend that money to fix that first main,
Well, why didn't we?
because we get a loan.
So,
But don't we pay the bond?
You can pay the loan, you.
But that's not what the bond interest payment is, that was just for the sewer plant upgrade? That wasn't for the repair?
Okay, if I may, there's typically upfront money to do some pre-engineering, to do a 5-year study of the facility, do a 5-year facility study about what is projected for the future, where we stand at the moment, and that. So some of those costs got paid out. And then on the force main, that was unexpected. So there was some upfront money that the commission, there were 2 leaks. One cost the commission $80,000, one cost the commission about $65,000. That's what drove for the commission to replacing the force main. Because that takes all the flow from down by Custom Pools up to the hill and down. So that needed to get done. Luckily, the commission did their due diligence and had the money in there so that that could be spent. And then, at some point there, from what I'm hearing, there can be a conversation about, and the commission did last year, take some money out of the enterprise fund to reduce the rate. Because when I started to figure out how much the sewer rate, if it's 30-something per 100 cubic feet, that's not gonna fly. So they ponied in some money to help, no different than a town would take out of their undesignated fund or whatever they call it, to reduce the tax rate.
Which raises another point, I would like to know that. I'd like to have something in writing that says that the sewer commissions have voted to reduce the rates and supplement it by the enterprise fund.
It's in your packet.
It's in the
Okay, so I'm sure it is, but how do you vote it? You just, when do you vote it? Do you set the rates?
No, it's done before that.
Okay, so I mean, before you set the rates, what is the motion? The board said we want to take so much out of the enterprise fund and put it towards general operations?
No more than 250,000.
That's the maximum per year.
That's what we voted.
Okay, that's what you voted.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't believe that's been done.
Okay, it's the first time.
As far as I know.
Yeah, okay. And this, reducing the rates, that's just for 1 year.
Yes,
That was for 2021.
So it's a one-shot thing,
that was what the money. Yes.
right? Okay. So ratepayers have been paying into that rate for a long time to build up that enterprise fund. And then a big chunk of money goes and reduces the rate for just 1 year, and then presumably the rates go up again. Is that correct?
That may not be correct.
Oh, all right.
We haven't calculated the rates yet for 22.
Right.
When that happens, we're gonna look at the rates for 22, according to our budget,
Okay.
and figure it out. I don't think we need to try to figure it out.
What physical things are you guys doing that are going to make the rates less? Are you
Well, for one
operating in a
for one
different
thing,
way? Are you?
the force mains that were replaced, they were pipes in concrete. Iron pipes, am I correct?
Yeah.
They weren't replaced with that. They were replaced with plastic, which has a very long life.
Great.
These things used to go bad all the time, they would leak. So we did Woodbury Ave because we could do Woodbury Ave. They hadn't started leaking yet, but they were old pipes. They hadn't been touched since the plant got built. So that's what we're doing, we're replacing, upgrading all the force mains, upgrading our pump stations, things that haven't been done since the plant was built. Okay. So those are the things we're trying to do, we're trying to see some savings on that.
The issue with the board is that we want to see a sustained lower rate, not just a one-off here and there. And, I guess you have to do things like that to save money later on, and I recognize that, but I think what we want to hear is that the rates are gonna be, you know, lower than what they could have been because we're doing this, and this. Here's the list of the 5 things that we're doing. That's one of them, that's a great example. I'm sure there are others, maybe there's efficiencies you can have in contracts that you write, whatever, but shuffling money around isn't how to make the money, the rates lower. It's, you know, a list of several things with actively driving the rates down over time.
Okay, if I can ask a really dumb question too, piggybacking on what Jamie was saying. So you guys are proactively replacing some of the infrastructure that you got?
Yeah, there's not much left to do. We've done everything. We've done just about everything. Would you say that's us?
Yes, I mean, we did a total plant upgrade in 2016. And if you look at this, you'll see that when those sewer rates made a substantial jump, and we had to replace the force main. From dialogue that I've heard from these the last few years, I'm reluctant to bring forward anything of major because until we can get a grasp and get these rates down. Another reason the rates were high, and I hate to continue, is COVID and the malls lost flow. In order for us to build a sewer rate, if we have more flow, it helps lower.
Yeah.
We hadn't had that. That's why the commission voted to put some money in to reduce that rate. We're hoping we don't have to do it, but I'm cognizant of trying to make this sewer rate as low and stable as possible. But you have a very good treatment plan, and I think everybody wants to keep it that way. I full well know that the sewer rate is high, but there are some things the commission can do, i.e. that you're asking me, and they'll probably ask me to do, is to look at this budget. I will caution you that about taking the enterprise fund, if you look at this rate, when the rates went up, you'll see the biggest jump in the rates went up was in 2018, when we had our first bond payment for the $8.8 billion construction, i.e. $498,000. If they say you wish they take that off, that's not gonna take many years to get 1.3 million down. Probably take 2.5 years, and then that money is gone.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a way to run an operation. I think,
So,
and I'm not saying anybody is saying that's what you want us to do.
no, that's not necessarily what I'm asking you to do, but there's 2 questions. One is from Martha. Martha, do you have, just to put this in real terms, do you have any data on what the rates are for, like, what's an average payer paying, whether it's a residential address or a commercial
Yes,
in this town?
sure.
Do you have that with you today?
No, I don't. I know Dennis has it, and he can get it.
I forget it. I mean,
Not the rate, but what's an average residence pay that's hooked into the?
It depends how much water they use. It's
Of course,
based on, it's based on water use.
it's about $2,000. If they use more water, it can be $3,000
For the year?
for the year.
Gotcha, okay. That's substantial.
Simplex pay considerable. You know, restaurants pay high thousands of dollars, 60, 70, so.
Okay, and capital improvements, getting back to that, are there any coming up? Any piping, any of the mains?
Not that we're aware of.
Okay, so-
We've done about all the force mains that we need to.
All right, so that part's done.
That part is done.
Gotcha.
Now, let me be clear, in our industry with old sewer pipes in the ground, something could happen. These, you know,
We understand that.
The force mains are the most vulnerable because they're forced.
but I think the basic infrastructure is good. If I say that tomorrow or tonight, I'll get an alarm and something will happen. We'll deal with that.
budgeting, you're right, it's not perfect, to just move money around constantly all over the place. However, if there's a big bond that goes away at some point, you can kind of chip away at that and get this enterprise fund to an operating level that everybody's safe and comfortable with. That's something where the cost does end at one point. And that bond payment's $400,000 a year.
How long, you got two bonds, you're paying them?
Yeah.
And how long are they? How much more do they have to run?
How much more is on the plan upgrade?
We have well, the bond started paying in 2018, it's 20 years. So we're at 60, when we pay the next payment, I think, well, I know it's in June, we'll have 16 years left.
Okay. That's
The
one.
bond, and just, we did get $1 million debt reduction, and we are getting, state aid grant to the tune of $147,000 back on that major $8.8 million. Applications are in for the fourth main, but I don't know. But that's where we're at, about 16 years and 20.
Applications are in for the force main, would you?
To get the state aid grant.
Oh.
You do what happened.
We apply for everything we can.
Okay. So those bond payments, it's a huge investment. Those are big, 16 and 20 years down the road. So that's gonna be part of your fixed expense, but they're not, at least, inflation will kick in and it won't seem so bad. 15, 20 years. So I guess we're wondering, are you going to be able to sustain a reasonable sewerage rate over the next 5 or 10 years?
Well, I'm hoping we get more flow.
Which would help, yeah.
Okay.
Because you've got the capacity. How much extra capacity do you have? What percentage of your?
I'm less than half.
Less than half, so we got a lot of.
When they did that 5-year study, they projected we're good for the next 20 years.
Okay, so you're at about half.
We have plenty of capacity.
Yep, good, all right. That's something the Industrial Development Commission should know. Maybe they do. Okay.
I don't want a heavy water, I don't want a real extreme heavy effluent of water. I don't want a milk factory.
No, right, no, I agree with that. It's something that, I think this came up with the brewery, it's a nice thing to have in town, but they have a heck of a lot of effluent in the phosphorus issue to it. So
And it's not a clean waste, so.
it's not a clean way, so, the industrial development may not do that, that's something they have to weigh.
I am pro-development, I will never, and I'm not thinking anybody would think I would. I do not, if they come in, I work with them, I do what we can.
Yeah, I'm sure. Okay, now, going back to our point, I want to discuss this as thoroughly as we can tonight. I don't want to repeat this down the road. However, if people want more information and can make a decision quickly on, next week or the week after, that's fine. So what is the consensus of the board? You want to delay a vote on this until we get some of those figures in?
I think that's appropriate, table.
Okay.
If I could have a list of what it is,
I'd also like to just add that the sheet, the enterprise fund sheet, some of the items, I just want either Rick or you to take a look at the sheet, because the numbers that you were saying when we were talking about what has been spent in the past don't match any of the numbers that are on the sheet. So I just want to make sure that those are all accurate as well.
Okay, so I think that what we're asking for, Martha, the town collects these bills, don't they? They pay the bills?
Actually, the sewer commission does.
They pay the bills. And they collect the fees as well?
Yes.
Okay. A more recent accounting of how much you spent, this past year. And it sounds like that's imminent. You're gonna have that in a week or two. So that's one thing we want. The other thing is maybe a little better explanation of the enterprise fund transfers in and out. Okay.
I think we all recognize that we'd like to see this, everyone would like to see the rates lower. I think we all want to make sure that the plant is healthy and the people who run the plant are appropriately paid, but we want to see a plan that we're gonna do this, 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 and this in order to bring the sewer rates down over time. Just a bullet list of things that you guys are doing and working on that you think will reach that goal.
We have a sewer commission meeting on the 20th, so if there is, and I'm assuming there's going to be another meeting, if you could have it after the 15th, well, Wednesdays are good for me, or whenever.
So you're meeting on the 15th?
Pardon?
You're meeting on the 15th?
20th.
20th? Okay.
And if you have very valid good reasons why that goal can't be met, you know, you can't recreate, take something that doesn't exist, you can't squeeze out water out of the stone, but if it costs what it costs, but we wanna make sure that we are doing everything we can to make that.
And if I may, I understand where you're coming from, and we've done everything that, we think we could.
We're asking this of every department. So you're here, and you're here in just your session, but, I think the other departments, we really had to tighten the belt over the past year, particularly since we had such a huge tax increase last year. We're, really looking at every department very carefully.
So your meeting's on the 15th, right?
20th,
The 20th.
third Wednesday of the month.
Okay, I hate to call a special.
Well, yeah, if you need us, two of them are here, if they need an emergency meeting. I can't act alone, I need
All right.
direction from.
I don't wanna call a special meeting to discuss this. We could vote on it on the 12th or the 19th. Highway and town, school district warrants. The 12th is next week, but I don't know if you're gonna have much information about it. Yeah, John.
Before we get into that, maybe I just want to clarify a couple things.
All
So,
right. Go ahead.
in looking at this budget, the only real items that I see that have gone up a lot are testing fees from 30 to 50, and sludge disposal from 50 sludge disposal from 60 to 70. Is there any other items that I'm missing that have gone up a lot?
No, and I don't think that's a contention. I think the contention is that money hasn't been spent. We don't know what they spent this past year.
Oh, it says, because it just says as of 11/23, is that what you're at?
Yeah.
You know, if I may, just one more thing on sludge, the state of Maine is surcharging for every ton that we bring up to the compost facility, the surcharge is $10. PFOAS, whatever,
Yeah.
testing in the state of Maine of ground, so that's why there was an increase of that.
It's like, yeah. So I'm gonna think that maybe by the 19th, we could have some better spending figures. And maybe, a kind of an idea of where the enterprise fund stands.
Yep.
Okay, so I would entertain a motion to table this until the 19th. And again, we can't discuss it long on the 19th, because we have a pretty big agenda.
Question about
Okay. All right, let me get this out of the way first. Motion to table to the 19th, is there a second? A second? Okay, any discussion on the motion itself? Okay, all in favor of tabling to the 19th? Aye, okay. Okay, one abstention. Okay, good. Motion passes to table to the 19th. All right, now, fine.
Dennis, can you just explain to me the abatements line item?
Abatement would be,
I know what they are, but when do you use them? Did you use any in 2021? Do you plan to use any in 2022? When's that line?
we haven't used any in the last couple of years. It's really a placeholder number. I mean, I could lower that to $1 if somebody had a valid abatement. We'd have to find the money.
So I'm thinking of creative ways where maybe we can help businesses that are adversely affected for their size by the sewer rate versus ones that are not, like what you say, like Subcom or something like that. It's a fairly large enterprise, so with their sewer charge, maybe that's not as impactful to their total revenue every year. Is there a way that we can kind of sponsor or maybe, give scholarship to some smaller places, some smaller business that might be, have a greater, that's what I'm wondering.
That's a policy question.
You really can't do that.
I don't,
You're not
I'm
the
scared
king
of
of
the
the
government getting into tax rules.
I don't know who's gonna pick, but
Yeah,
Won't be me.
exactly. Who do you think? How do you pick one versus?
I would
another?
say, is there anything like a volume discount, or is it all the same, everybody pays the same per?
water in, water out.
Water in, water out, flat fee.
And keep in mind, these rates are based on last year's flows, you understand? So 21 is based on 20's flow.
Right.
This fourth does not give us automatic, meter readings, okay?
Updated.
So keep in mind, if somebody went out of business, they get billed on 20s, okay? If they went out of business in 21, we did have someone that happened to. They didn't use any water, but we still charged them. Because we go on last year, so we had to use some of that paper money, get them back. We didn't use the water.
So basically, as you say, the rate is based on last year's flow.
Right, right,
But, as you said, they go out of business, you're gonna reimburse it.
absolutely.
One more question, the testing, that's, line item, 490, what's the frequency of that testing?
Twice a year. Some are done monthly for total nitrogen, DFOA.
I'm talking about 90, I'm talking about 490.
Oh,
That's the big item.
that, all testing is taken out of that line.
Even the nitrogen testing guys, I guess nitrogen too.
Nitrogen, DFOA, heavy metals for the sludge, toxicity testing, twice a year for effluent to see if some kind of fish or shrimp die.
So when you say twice a year, does that mean 2 samples?
Correct.
So you anticipate paying
Yeah.
$50,000
I mean,
to test 2 samples?
it's a $1,500 test twice a year.
$1,500.
It's not just put a piece of paper in the water, it's
I
an
understand
elaborate
that.
testing.
I understand that, I've done water tests, I know what they cost. So, and 50,000 for 2 tests just seems pretty high to me.
I'm PFOA testing that is coming up this year. Twice a year in the effluent, twice a year in the influent.
Oh, so it's 4 tests then?
Correct. And then really 6 tests, and then twice a year on the sludge.
8 tests?
Correct. Plus, that's just for the PFOA component, and then there's heavy metals for the sludge. There's other things that the state of Maine is requesting, plus the EPA. When we do testing of the sludge or even testing of the influent and the effluent for the PFOSs, you can't just go grab a sample. You gotta have the appropriate bottles, sample bottles, collecting material and that, because you can't have plastic. You can't have clothes that you use dry sheets on.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, it still seems like kind of a big number.
Oh, they're pretty in-depth testing.
Are you seeing, positive, testing on, the PFOA, PFOS? Are we having that in our,
In the sludge, we've had minimal.
minimal?
When we did the force main and we had to take groundwater samples, it's pretty hot.
Yeah, because it's in the ground.
Because it had to be treated, when they did it, they had, even the reliability project, that had to be treated through a fracking system, through carbon filters, and then dumped into the sewer. But it meant drinking water standards, so. But we're lucky that the sludge hasn't picked up much PFOS. Now, the effluent, we've never done, so I don't know.
Right. I mean, that's a hot button issue over
Yeah,
at the base, so.
we're hopeful that the majority of our water comes from the city of Portsmouth drinking water. It's when, if they're on septic systems and you have a well and mitigation of water in, we may pick up some, but I think we're hoping that it stays below the threshold. I'll answer that in a year.
Good, I'm curious to hear if that's, that system's detecting, PFAS, PFOA.
Okay, is there any further questions?
I have a question. You mentioned that line 490 testing fees includes nitrogen testing,
Yes.
so why do we have line 495 for nitrogen testing? It's an unspent line, and you're requesting another $2,000 next year.
Correct, and that, I mean, there's also testing charges for nitrogen sampling that's done out in Great Bay, where the town of Newington is in with the 17 other communities, and we pay in, instead of 10 or 12 different communities doing different testing, we all got into where,
But all your testing comes out of line 490.
well, other than,
That's something new we haven't spent yet.
Okay.
That's why it looks like that, because we don't know what the number's gonna be yet. But our share is gonna be minimal. We wanted to separate, the taxing, because it's with other towns, it's not,
Okay, thank you.
it's for all of them.
So this is the issue with it, is that $2,000 every year keeps going to the enterprise fund.
It's a new item.
It's a new item.
No, it says, this was on the 2020 budget.
But it's
2 years ago, never spent, exactly, but that money gets sent to you guys, and it goes to the enterprise fund.
It'll be going this year.
What's that?
It'll be going this year.
So what about the last $4,000? I mean, we tighten our belt on every, we're sitting on a committee, we tighten our belt on every other committee, and we just, there's $4,000 we already paid for testing. It already went to your enterprise fund, why don't you use the enterprise fund for it?
It's part of the operating cost. We don't use that for operating cost.
Well, then why don't we take it out of major, maintenance?
I don't know. The basic thing is that we like money that's spent to be an accurate budget. We understand that you need to allow some things. This is not a big item. The testing is, if you don't spend it, fine, it goes to the enterprise fund. But I think the point that Brandon was trying to make is, don't just throw it in there unless you're pretty sure you're gonna spend it.
There's really two funds. There's the operating fund, i.e. the checkbook, and then there's the enterprise fund. If the checkbook amount gets too high, they'll slide money over to the enterprise fund. No different than communities do to the undesignated fund. I get your point.
Okay. Thanks.
Any further questions? Okay, so we're not gonna take a vote on this because we all voted to table it. I appreciate your time, I think you've got a good sense. Martha, can you be a liaison? And we can quote, we need to update the budget by the 19th. And also have some kind of thing on the enterprise fund, maybe an update of the enterprise fund, where it stands and where it's going. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis.
Appreciate your patience. Okay, is there any other business to come before us? Okay,
I'd like to talk about one
sure, go ahead.
topic, as it says, committee, and I think it's come up a couple of times before, but having, representatives from different departments that come in and talk about their own wages, in a public back and forth is, I don't think is very productive, with the budget committee. I think, yeah.
Ideally, the supervisors and the employees of the road commission, and they should talk. How many still commissions do we have? You're one.
I'm not,
With Jack Boyd?
Jackie Hoyt was here.
Really?
Jackie Boyce is he's a supervisor.
All right.
Skip was here.
Skip was.
Yeah.
And Skip was here, okay. I think you're right, it's awkward, it's the same with the librarian, the chief librarian. It's awkward for her to talk about her salary.
Yeah.
And it should be members of the supervisory boards. because it does, you're quite right.
It's not fair to them. It's
No, it's
fair.
not. If they're talking about, the other people, then that's fine, because they're the supervisor. But for them, it should be from the commissioners, police, fire, and so on. Okay.
Could we potentially, carve out all the different wages, or at least as many as we can, on the topic, like Brandy's bringing up, and talk about all of those on the same day?
Well,
I wanna make sure that we're treating Department A the same as we're treating Department B, and the same, and so when we come up with a vote, it's even across the board.
yeah,
I wouldn't wanna, like, oh, the police comes in and maybe we feel good one day and we give them a big raise, and maybe the fire's here the next day and we're feeling grumpy, and it seems appropriate to talk about them all at the same time, such that, I don't know, maybe not fire because they have their own thing,
Well, we don't have a-
the idea is to,
Okay.
well, the ones that we do,
I know, I see what you're,
we
Yeah.
treat them equal
I see
at
what
the
you're,
same day.
okay, I see where you're coming from. We have to be careful, we don't get into managing.
Correct.
However, consistent wage treatment is valid. And, it'd be nice to have every year, we have a report of what each position pays. Doesn't have to have a name, but if it's the fire chief, or the assistant chief, or lieutenant, or patrolman, police officer, or assistant librarian, full-time, that would be nice to know. And it would also be nice to know, normally, and I think the selectmen are coordinating this, normally if it's not a union position, there tends to be a consistent code, and that's what it should be. And I agree with you that, you don't want individual commissions suddenly awarding big bonus to somebody without a reason. So we should have, ideally we should have some sort of consolidated personnel list that shows what the positions are, what their pay grade is, and what their increase is.
The tide should rise,
Yeah.
all
We don't-
it's the same.
Yeah, years ago, I tried to institute basically a complete pay system across the board with steps and so it didn't work. Nobody wanted to do it. But
And
you do
there's-
have to have some consistency.
There's the performance section too, I mean, if someone,
Yeah. Again,
Yes,
it's
well,
not our job to decide performance. But if somebody says, we believe that this person deserves more than a COLA, or more than a step, that they have grown in the position has more responsibilities. We wanna know that. We don't want it buried in the bottom line, all labor costs. We like to know where those labor costs are coming from. They're not, and again, I don't wanna swamp you guys with a lot of information, but ultimately, it's right. Labor is our most expensive item, and it's a big fairness issue. That we wanna treat people equally. Okay,
Well, they used to post all the payroll in, town report.
Still do.
It's
So,
just,
yeah,
it's there, it's
It
just that,
needs, right, it needs titles to it,
Yeah.
so we can add on that and get that to the committee.
okay, good.
but the thought is that when we're going over the, whatever budget, we're not focused on, we should be focused on the, management of the budget, not so much the management of the wages. Like the wages, like we wanna, that's the wages, okay, let's move that along. Now let's talk about, what are they doing with the resources that they have?
Mhm.
I wanna focus mostly on, making sure that management of those resources are done well. And then we talk about wages, on a separate discussion, such that it's a little bit isolated, so it's not,
is it possible to do private session when we're talking about, isn't that what?
I don't wanna get into personnel sessions, I'd like to keep the budget committee clear of that. When it becomes public and you make a decision and there's a dollar sign attached, then we get involved. But anyway, both points are well taken, Jim. Any other discussion on new business? Okay. Okay, I'll see you guys next week. We'll take an order to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
A second? Okay, 2 seconds. All in favor? Okay, thanks very much.